And I'll begin with the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan having emerged victorious in the country's presidential election. Turkey's high electoral board said Erdogan has won more than half the votes. Now speaking after the elections, incumbent warned against disputing the election results. Erdogan's victory in the presidential election will now get him sweeping new executive powers under a constitutional shakeup approved in a referendum last year. And now joining us out of the UK is Tony Gosling, investigative journalist. Hello, Tony. Pleasure to have you back on the program. It's actually been a while since we spoke. And now, Tony, your thoughts on this whole election? I mean, the opposition is screaming foul play, but whatever your thoughts are on that. And also on the new empowerment that we're going to see, Erdogan is obviously going to become more authoritarian. He's going to be able to pick half the nation's Supreme Court judges. He's going to be able to pick all the ministers he wants, government officials. I mean, he's basically going to be the man, something he's been striving to do for the last 16 years. Your thoughts, please.
Well, first of all, just calling these early elections is really important. It shows Erdogan's confidence. Also, it's not just the opposition in Turkey that's been calling foul play. It's also people like the BBC. I noticed Mark Lowen tonight on the BBC broadcasting around the world, using words like unappealing to describe President Erdogan and charismatic to describe the opposition leader. Now, this is no way to report on an election. Elections are actually fairly serious businesses. That is where we get democracy, and it seems the BBC aren't really interested in what the people of Turkey want. They are also, I mean, they're really crying foul because a lot of elections nowadays are fixed. In fact, there's a lot of pressure on those electorates in many cases, for example, through funds, to fund opposition movements, to fund rallies and that sort of thing in order to try and steer things one way or the other. It's called psychological warfare. It's what the BBC do a great deal of nowadays. And so I'm just disgusted to see people like Mark Lowen just not reporting sensibly on what is actually a really good result for Erdogan. And it shows that he's a confident leader. He's had a difficult couple of years, particularly with the coup attempt, which most people now agree was started by the United States. And he's obviously decided that war may be coming to his region. And if it does, he wants his country to be very strong and for Turkey to be independent, to be able to make its own mind up, not to be a puppet of one of the superpowers.
Right, and your thoughts now on moving forward with the referendum, the 2017 referendum, and giving him, where the president goes from a largely ceremonial role to what we're going to see now, with the empowerment that he's finally going to obtain, something he's pursued for quite a while. What kind of Erdogan are we going to see in the next 5 years, and how is Turkey going to come out? And do you think, in your professional opinion, it's going to be a better country, a worse country for the Turkish people?
Well, look, in the modern world where bankers, I should say banksters, can buy out a free press, a free press is quite a risky business for any leader because that press can actually persuade people not to vote for you. That's what's been happening right across the West, for example, with enormous attacks on Jeremy Corbyn, calling him a terrorist in the run-up to last year's election here in Britain. And so I think this is why Erdogan has really clamped down on the press. I think this is not necessarily the wisest thing he's done over the years, and I feel very sorry for many of the journalists who had honesty and integrity. But the fact is that foreign powers are buying into presses around the world and trying to buy up the newspaper coverage in order to affect the political process. And I think that's why Erdogan is now where he is. I think he's actually now, when we've seen just over the last few weeks, the refusal of the Americans to sell their latest fighter jets to Turkey. I think what's happened is quietly, without any announcement on the BBC or on the Western press, Turkey has now kind of quietly slipped out of NATO because it doesn't believe that the NATO allies, the main chief NATO allies, the Brits, the French and the Americans, can really be trusted anymore. And they're veering more and more over towards the Russian side because the Russians, let's face it, in the Middle East are the only really trusted superpower. The Americans and the Brits, through the likes of Bush and Blair, have completely blown it. And that's why I think Turkey is now veering away. And also I think that we'll see Erdogan despite his more, shall we say, veering towards more of an authoritarian type of leadership and taking a grasp of his country, he's had the confidence to go to the people, and the people have given him their backing.
Always appreciate your perspective there, Tony. Thank you for joining us once again. Mr. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, joining us out of the UK.